Alrighty, well, we're live here on Facebook, LinkedIn, and all those good places. So I hope everybody's well. So let's go on air, shall we? So let's click on that button and get ourselves on air because we're good to go talking to everybody on LinkedIn, and on there, of course, anyone on Facebook, which we have pretty good following now. Actually, quite pleased with Facebook that's done this year. Welcome to my mortgage live stream. It's December. It's getting very, very close to Christmas. We're all getting very excited here in Tivoli Studios because I just love Christmas and it's a great time of the year, isn't it? But things slow down a bit in the mortgage business because it always does and always has, and people are having parties and stuff like that. So now's the time for you to think about your own plans for next year. Everyone's goal setting, aren't they? And I'm a big believer in goal setting. I think you should do that really regularly, particularly over Christmas for the new year. So we're on part 2 today of our special kind of virtual leadership coaching kind of thing, which is going to help you out really if you're thinking about coaching your people more next year, or if you're worried about what the FCA are talking about. And I'm going to mention that to you in a second or two. So without any further ado, let's go straight over then to my presentation on virtual field coaching is what we're looking at today. Field coaching, which sounds like you're in a field with cows, isn't it? But we're actually out in the field, which means in a branch. But I'm looking at the virtual kind of coaching, online video on the phone is where I'm going. So let's head over to some slides then, shall we? Get ourselves connected there, and we'll talk about my little presentation for you. So let me pop in because, I can, and it's rude not to, isn't it? So that's me. We've seen all these things before, haven't we? Now, what I want to talk about this morning with you live is virtual field coaching. Now, I just have that little football pitch there. It's just a bit of fun, isn't it? When we talk about coaching, we often think about football or rugby or cricket or tennis, whatever your sport is. But I want to talk about virtual field coaching itself. Now, the reason for this is that you should do it if you run a team of advisors, or you are an advisor and maybe quite an effective one. You'll want to be helping the other advisors to improve their kit. Now, I'm going to get rid of that picture because it's pretty annoying, isn't it? Let's get to these serious people here. The FCA, our beloved regulator, of course, Financial Conduct Authority. For those of you in the know, they are pulling the strings now when it comes to oversight of ARs. You've probably read about it. It's going to be big next year. They're really on it, and rightfully so, because they recognized it being a bit of a problem. And here's their latest consultation paper, CP21/34, if anyone here, December 21. So it's about improving the appointed representatives regime is where they're going. And they're taking consultation now, and it's great to see that they're actually making grounds on this, because what it comes down to is the performance of your ARs, your mortgage advisors. So if you're a principal firm, a network firm, or you've got lots of people working under you as appointed representatives, or maybe they're employed people, it doesn't matter, then you've got to make sure that you improve their skills. And the best way of doing that is through regular field coaching. And we mean field coaching, really, we mean when they're with clients, on video, on the phone, maybe face to face, you as the coach, as the mentor, to watch them, observe them, and give them feedback, make them feel good, because this is what motivation is about nowadays. I think a lot of us tended to use the old models of motivation like Hertzberg and Maslow and all those old people. But the fact is, motivation's changed now. And if you can do some field visits, in other words, coach your people, give them some feedback, make them feel good, get them better at their jobs, that is what motivates people nowadays, particularly the younger generation. Look at the numbers here. This is the latest thinking on motivation. If somebody's achieving their best ability, they feel motivated. If they're being excellent at what they do, they feel motivated. If they get recognition, they feel motivated. Now, we've got over the top with that in the industry. I mean, I've seen more awards dinners this autumn than I've had hot dinners all my life. Everyone's got an awards dinner. Just care with that. I mean, recognition is great. I get all of that. But with field coaching, it's praise, recognition of your capability as well. Improving yourself, developing yourself, and of course freedom of expression, which very much a young person's motivation. If you're coaching people and you're using coaching techniques, then people are free to express themselves, how they felt they did, how they could improve. Remember, coaching, and I've talked about this last time, you've got to stop being the guru. Stop guruing around, as I call it. Stop telling everybody how good you are and telling them what they should be doing. You should do this. You should. No. Stop that. You've got to let go, and you've got to start coaching people. Coaching is, remember, pulling from people. And that's what we do with field coaching. So let me give you the model on how it works, because you're thinking, well, hold on, Paul, I ain't got time for all of this. I'm a busy broker. I'm dealing with high net worth clients. My ARs can get on with what they like. But you should be doing this regularly, once a month or whatever it is. If they're experienced, maybe if they're new, more often. So how do you do it? Well, I use a technique called POD. POD, P-O-D it stands for. Now, POD is an acronym to help you with your field coaching. So you've agreed then to go and spend half an hour, 45 minutes with one of your advisors on video, watching them with a client. It's easy on video. You just drop in as a video introduction person, and then you just observe. So how do you pod? Well, there's 3 parts to a pod. The first one is you pre-brief. You have to find out from them a few issues before you start, and I'll share that with you in a second. Then you have to observe them. Keep an eye on what they're doing, have a checklist maybe, you observe them. And then finally, you debrief is how you do it. Now, let me pick up an example for you of one that I did recently. Now, here's some notes that I took for an advisor. And I'll call this advisor Jim. It's not his name, but I think it's best to protect the innocent, isn't it? Now, here are the notes that I took when I did some virtual advising or virtual coaching. Now, the pre-brief, as I mentioned to you there, which is the one at the top there, that's really important. The pre-brief is where you set the scene with the advisor. Now, Jim, when I was coaching, is a very experienced advisor. He's been operating as a mortgage advisor for 25 years. I mean, that's a long time. The guy's really good at what he does. But like all good mortgage advisors who are working on their own pretty much, he wants some coaching, some guidance, just to make sure he's sharp and really doing well. And I said this to him. I said, look, Jim, we're going to be doing some coaching here, because his governor was paying for it. So I was like the coach for him for that day. I said, look, we're going to be providing some coaching. What is it you want me to coach you on? What are you working on? What is it you're trying to improve? What are you trying to get better at? And all advisors are working on something, be it technical or a skill or something like that. Now, I'm not talking about checking compliance. That's not coaching. That's checking compliance. That's a very big difference here. Here you're looking to develop somebody's skills and abilities as a mortgage advisor, not just to check that they're compliant. I get the fact you've got to check for compliance, and you should do that, but don't get it mixed up with coaching. It's part of it. It's not the whole thing. And this particular chap, Jim, we've been coaching him beforehand on his protection sales, and he was getting better at protection selling. We taught him how to do it. He hadn't done it for a few years. He'd lost the ability, really. He got out of the habit. And he wanted me to observe how he introduces protection selling. And he was particularly keen about critical illness, because he wasn't very good at selling critical illness and wanted to know how well he did with the client. I said, yeah, I'll do that. Introduce me as your coach with your client. Make sure the client knows I'm there. Introduce me, and you know, I'll observe you. And then when we finish observing, I'll then give you a debrief, a quick debrief. And that's what I call the pre-brief itself. The observation's fine. You observe them, you have some kind of checklist if you want to, or field guide, field book, or whatever it is, a playbook I call it, of all the skills that you need to have to be a mortgage advisor. A coach needs to be aware of these things and needs to observe accordingly. And then once you're done, you then have a debrief. So what happens in the debrief then? How does the debrief work? Well, the debrief itself is where you would talk to advisor about how they got on. And here's a structure for you for a debrief that might be quite useful for you. 4 parts to it. The first one is self-discovery. When you sit down with the advisor or you're on video, find out from them how well they did. I know it's a bit corny and most understand it. So how did it go then? What would you do the same again? You can do that if you want to. I tend to sort of say, well, you know the drill. What do you think? How did it go for you? What did you like? What didn't you like? If you could rewind time, did it again, what would you do differently? You should do this, because good advisors, professional, modern, experienced ones, are aware of what they're doing. And of course, that's the whole point. It's all about pulling, isn't it? But then there comes a point where you want to give some feedback. So how do you give feedback to an advisor, an experienced one or a confident one, in the right way that is quick and effective? Now, I've got a model called SPAN, which I'm going to share with you in a second. But actually, it's the same as Strictly Come Dancing. Now, I'm not a major fan of Strictly. I'll get you that. My wife watches it, and I like to watch it with her. And it's getting a shorter session now because there's not many people left in it. But Anton is particularly good at giving feedback. And I want you to adopt the same method that Anton uses. And I'm going to show you a clip now. It's on YouTube, so it's public domain. And I want to share with you a clip of Strictly Come Dancing and how Anton gives feedback. And then I'll quickly unpack it for you and let you think about what you think about this. So let's get on to the image then for you. I'll come back to that in a second. I just thought it was a lovely clip. Let's unpack what Anton did then, because he's been trained on how to give feedback. By the way, the timescale for feedback is pretty much there. That took him about, 2 minutes? And you should do the same when you're giving feedback to your advisor. So let me share with you the technique, then I'll share with you what I did with Jim. So here's the spams, as I call it, or spam is my feedback technique to use. The first thing with spam is you must do the self-discovery, which we've talked about. You must find out from the advisor how well she did, what did she do well, etc. You need to draw that out of them. And the more of that you do, the better. Some advisors are reticent to do that. I meet some advisors that say, well, I want you to tell me, tell me what you think, kind of thing. And I get all of that, it's fine. So what I do is I start off with positives. And Anton showered that couple with positives. He made them feel good. If you go back to the clip, the young girl, the dancer, she was beaming like a Cheshire cat when Anton was giving her the positive feedback. And with Jim, I did the same thing. I've got my notes here just to share what was going on here. And you can probably notice I've highlighted in pink the plus and the minus. I do a little T-bar here. And I've got the plus things, in other words, the good stuff that he did. And there's a couple of development areas we'll come on to in a second. And I've got 6 things that he did well. And I told him all 6. Adults need a lot of positive feedback, as long as it's genuine. I talked about 1 or 2 things about the budget and how well he did there, and the next steps and his mannerisms. Very genuine feedback. And that's what Anton did. But you probably also notice that Anton then gave an alternative way. That's the spam. This is the development piece. This is the value. And rather than tell them what they did wrong, which Craig did and did it badly, he gave them a professional alternative idea. He talked about some sort of dance technique. And I did exactly the same with Jim. I said to Jim, I said, look, one thing I think I could offer you that would make your session even better with your clients with the critical illness conversation. I said, what you could do, what was an idea for you, is when you ask the question about whether they knew anybody who has had a critical illness like cancer or heart attack, a family member or something. I thought that was really good what you did there, Jim, because it got the client to think about that. But if you added the phrase "who survived," it would have made a really big difference, because the client thought that they were thinking of friends who had died of cancer or heart attack. But the whole point about critical illness, of course, is that people survive. It was just one little nugget of an alternative way I gave to Jim. He accepted it because it was very genuine. It was only one. It was the one of many. I actually had 2 or 3 things to give him feedback on, but I don't work that way, nor does Anton. He made 1 suggestion, maybe 2, I think, but he just gave one really important one. I call it the one of many. It's the one of many which will produce a result for next time. Then you wrap it all up with a meaningful overall impact. In other words, Jim, that was a really good performance of that client. I think the client's very pleased with the performance you gave me. And Anton did the same thing. He said, overall, he says, really great performance. You did really well. And the audience clapped. That's how you do your PAM, or your spam, as I call it. Lots of positives, genuine ones. 1 alternative, not something they've done wrong, but 1 alternative, and then a meaningful overall impact will help the advisor to improve. The other thing, of course, with spams is speedily. It's got to be done quickly. Don't turn it into a 10-15 minute listing all the things they've done right, listing all the things they've done wrong. That's just a nightmare. It don't work, not in the modern world. Quick, just get it done. And then, of course, you have action plans. So back to the debrief ideas for you. Let's just put those back up for you. Self-discovery, then you got the feedback. You might want to reconcile some differences, possibly, if they got a few ideas, but then you have an action plan. Everything you do in coaching must have an action plan. Now with Jim, I said to Jim, okay, Jim, what are you going to do the same? What are you going to keep? What are you going to change? I always use keep, change. He said, well, I'm going to keep this, keep this, keep this. He said, I'll change. I said, I'll ask the client, he said, if they know anybody that's suffered from a critical illness like cancer, who's survived. And I'll ask the client those words. So he took on board my suggestion, and we wrapped up the coaching session and off he went. That's field coaching. It's highly motivational, very exciting. It gets people right for the day. You're keeping an eye on them, you have oversight on them, you're developing them, you're making them better. It's massively motivational, and that's what the FCA are looking for more of next year. So if you ain't doing it at the moment, you need to start doing it. It's as simple as that. You need to make a plan. If you're doing it virtually using video to see clients, it's really easy to do virtual coaching, and you can coach 5, 6, 7, 8 advisors in a day if you really wanted to, as long as there's not long meetings that you're observing. So I would suggest 45 minutes possibly is a good sweet spot to work with an advisor. So you could do 6 of those a day, 7 of those a day if you really pushed it. So it can be done. If you have to jump in a car and go places all the time, it's going to take a long while, isn't it? But that might be something you might want to do as well. So that's my piece on field coaching and the Strictly Come Dancing. I like that one, didn't you? It was a really good one. That was the end of the day. So that's me, Paul Archer. Hope that's been useful. Great. Let's just remove me there and put me back over here then onto our system on the thing. I hope you're all well. Hope you've enjoyed these kind of different updates for you on mortgages and live streams. The mortgage sector is looking buoyant. It's looking good. It's starting to mature now. Lots going on, actually. Remember to set your goals for next year and get things organised and planned. What have we got going on here at Tivoli Studios? Well, we've got a number of launches next January. We've got a new boot camp starting in the end of January. We had one start last week. It's going really well. That's for CMAP. We've got an equity release boot camp and a protection boot camp. These are for the exams. My recommendation to all mortgage advisors, they should get the protection exam and maybe the equity release at some point in the future. So we've got boot camps for that, which are pre-recorded videos and audios, really good. We've got the Sales Academy or the Skills Academy starting in the new year. And we've got the new role play product, which involves real-time role play on video with me giving feedback. People set up role plays where they give advice and I give them feedback, like coaching, if you like, for somebody that's new. So we're going to get you up to speed with that. So that's a new product we've got coming in January. Apart from that, we're going to be here again next week. We've got the third part of this virtual leadership, reading your advisors online. So reading body language and facial expressions on video online. Got some fascinating stuff for you next week on that one. Other than that, I hope you're going to have a great week. Remember, it's Christmas soon, so you can send me a present if you want to, or a Christmas card. It's entirely up to you, or just say Happy Christmas if you wish to. I'll see you all next week. Bye.